Hello, I'm Yukiri Ryamu.
Hello, my name is Kimamaru. We are users of 8kum's sister site, 5ch, and victims of Ronald Wakitons Company's employees.
In other words, we Japanese unknowingly provided financial assistance and technology to Ronald Wakitons, aka Q, and caused confusion in America. First of all, I would like to apologize to the American people.
この動画は、Qインプザストームを見ながら、ミラとロナルドの妻の中国人と菅原について話す動画です。
スティーブ・バノンが、Q であった年。
Ronald Wakitons, former CEO of 5ch, did you really think that US President Trump's strategist Steve Bannon didn't hire anyone and was working alone on the internet? I wonder if Steve Bannon has no money, no friends, no family, no internet technology. Something that could be the strategist who led President Trump to the election.
In chapters 5 and 6, it is mentioned that Mr. Steve Bannon was not involved as Q, but even so, Sugawara and Ronald, the president of ACE, did a sloppy maneuver.
Why did Ronald take the IP of Steve Bannon's house? I don't know, but, in the first place, Mr. Q must have 3 or 4 lines, and change the connection to Wi-Fi, and so on.
Even if this encrypted host information is suddenly claimed to be the IP of Steve Bannon's house, since Q has not committed any crimes, there is no way he could tell the contractor to request information from this provider called Costa Mesa Charter Communications. Or is the US privacy policy really that lax? Sheer Anketo.
いや、スティーブ・バノンさんはたくさん家借りたりしてるようで、それだけでは証拠になりませんが。
But the first episode is more interesting. Please watch it.
Must be Paul Faber, who was named as the first generation of Q by Canon. It was written in the Asahi Shimbun.
Since it is published in the Asahi Shimbun, which Megumi Sugawara and Ace both love, it must be true. Also, since Sugawara and Ace go out of their way to intimidate Nirai Kanai and others by saying, it's true that it's written in the Asahi Shimbun, there's no doubt that Q is also Ronald Wakitons.
And Paul Farber is bald.
いやね。
But there are many interesting stories, especially in IT technology.
So, let's take a look at the truth about Canon, referring to the Asahi Shimbun article earlier.
First of all, unlike 2CH, this bulletin board called 8chan doesn't seem to be visible to anyone other than Ronald Wakitons, even the IP address.
It seems quite bullish to know who the other party is just by knowing the IP address. In fact, IP addresses are often shared by families, schools, and companies.
インプズ10を使いません、マルチプル。
I see, so you decided not to have a specific user agent. That's the trick I talked about in the previous video.
But even if you change the user agent over and over, it seems to be iPhone and iPad after all. As far as Chapter 4 is concerned.
自称、アメリカの愛国者が中華アンドロイド使ったらあかんでしょ。
The iPhone and iPad user agents share a lot in common, and there are no unique characteristics for each person.
In other words, the original Q also changed the user agent over and over. From that situation in the case of Q, so to speak, 2 channels, it is the upper half of the 4 digits. This changed. Given that Q is changing the underlying user agent further, is it technically identifiable?
無理に決まってんやろがい。
In the first place, the first generation Q just does not use Windows 10, the version below that. You can afford to use Windows 7 or 8.1, right? You can change the user agent in Linux. From this story alone, I can't see any technical reason why Ronald Wakitons was able to identify Q. Moreover, if Q is used as a user agent that is often used such as iPhone, Ronald can confirm identity. That's
impossible.
If you operate a normal internet site, you have to give up identification when the IP changes.
なんで、お前、インターネットのホストが変わって、全6デバイス使って、しかも iPhone とかユーザーエージェント被るの対応していたやつが、回線が変わり、同じ iPhone 使ってたからといって、それだけで同じ人間だと同定できるんだよ。ロナルドの野郎も、2017年12月の時点で、こいつの旧ハゲが使ってたパスはマトロックとバレてんだぞ。
But Q's followers probably say that Ronald is someone they can trust.
Socially trustworthy sites and administrators don't use user agents to identify individuals in the first place. Gabagabadishi.
Even at Amazon, if I change the IP from such an unknown device and access it, I get a message saying this is unauthorized access. But is it really you? So, at this point, Frederick Brennan only went as far as to say, there's another line between Q and Ronald Wakitons.
Between Sugawara and Yarunoke-chan, I guess you think there was something like trading with DM, or was it a relationship like Fox, Hi, and Nakao? Indeed, such questions should be asked.
It seems that the mechanism of 8chan was like this. Well, I know this alone is vulnerable. First, A-chan decided who would be the manager of the bulletin board that she could talk to. It seems that only the administrator can confirm the encrypted IP address of the writing there.
例えば、ニライカナイが日本大好き掲示板みたいなの作って、その中では、ニライカナイ星名義だけが、そこの書き込みのわっちょい上4桁を見えるとともに、その管理人が、相手のトリップを使えなくする機能などもあるらしい。でも、あくまで、この仮管理人が見れるのは、わっちょい上4桁だけで、実際に生 IP を見れるのは、フレドリック・ブレンナンも見せられないようにしていて、見れるのはロナルドただ一人だったと。あとは父親のジムくらいか。
菅原の同僚も納得のボロセキュリティ。
First of all, don't believe Ronald's contrived story that Steve Bannon didn't hire anyone, didn't use multiple devices, didn't spoof his IP address, wrote from home as Q, etc.
Maybe Steve Bannon has better camouflage skills than this Ronald Wakitons. Even if you do, he'll use a paid proxy.
Trump also used a VPN to tweet from China. Everyone has this level of IT knowledge. Or Ivanka Trump, Donald Trump, or like Taro Kono, Mitsuo, or something. All this. Same with Steve Bannon.
Without relying on an agent, it feels like buying and eating potatoes at McDonald's. About a VPN, you will do it yourself without asking anyone. Even Russians do it.
So, the manager Q. Not Ronald Wakitons. The question is whether Q can be identified under the given conditions.
This first Q, well, the true identity is... If Trip Key was 2chan, it was # Matlock, so it was easily broken.
2018年1月の5日くらいのお話です。正確には、2017年12月15日くらいからだという。
So the problem is, this original Q used more than 6 devices. First of all, it is doubtful whether the user agent even contained version information. Even the developer mode presets that come with Google Chrome can pretend to be iPhones, iPads, and PlayStations.
ああ、6種だろうが60種だろうが。
3万種以上に増やせるわよ。2ちゃんやってたら知ってて当然の話だって、前の動画でも話したけど。
At this point, the original Q seems to be confessing that he didn't use Windows 10, but such a confession is unreliable. User agents can be changed at will.
無事な話でデバイス6つ以上持ってた可能性もある。別にねえデバイスなんて安いし。
平井かなえさんもこの程度のことは、もちろん承知でしょう。仮に福赤なんかやるなら、デバイスごと変えてクッキーも何もかも新品にしますよ。普通の常識なら。
また、こういう管理人は、どういうスマホをユーザーが持ってるかも含めて、開示してはならないんです。ほのめかしもダメ。
業務上知り得た情報の指摘有用なのよ。これ。
どっちにしよう、運営が認証してやる必要性はない。認証なんかしたら、議論誘導になる。
どうやって、デバイスをコロコロ変えてた人物が、ある日、固定 IP とデバイスを固定して話してる、と、そういう話であり、それが、Q本人であると、ロナルドが勝手に認証したということなんだぜ。要するに、運営都合がいい人間だけ、ユーザーエージェント特定サービスなんてもんをこのバカがやってたわけだ。2チャンネルではそんな歴史一度もないのに。
パスワードが漏れて困ってる？普通そんなの知らんがな。って話よね。
だが、本当に同定できたか、その技術が確かかどうかは調査する必要がありすぎるな。
まず、そのユーザーエージェントがいくらでも改変できたという話すらすっぽかしているようなら、お話にもならないんですがね。こういう事情で、そもそも同定は不能です。
Hello, I'm Yukiri Ryamu.
Hello, my name is Kim Amaru. We are users of 8kum's sister site, 5ch, and victims of Ronald Wakitons Company's employees.
In other words, we Japanese unknowingly provided financial assistance and technology to Ronald Wakitons, aka Q, and caused confusion in America. First of all, I would like to apologize to the American people.
まったく、面倒ごとしか起こさないのに、腹いせにごちゃんの方を規制するなんて頭菅原めぐみだぜったく。
To be honest, Japan's rotten 5-channel management was run by a man named Ace, who was anti-American, pro-North Korea, and pro-China. So at that time, QAnon and 8kum were connected. I didn't understand until halfway through. The management of Japan's Ace 5-channel continued to take anti-American actions, such as banishing journalists who criticized China, and continued to insist that it was legally correct.
In other words, although Ronald Wakitons was Q himself, or was definitely a supporter of Q, he was acting in completely opposite ways in Japan and the United States.
In the past few days, Loki Technology employees disguised as volunteers for Japan's Bird, Ace, and Scheme have been performing their own activities. 8 single quote S staff in the US must also have been dispatched to anonymously defend Q. Their true identities are low-key technology employees who have started the 8kun News Plus thread. Frederick Brennan has opened up about this and said in the previous video that their actions violated copyright.
Actually, I thought Q aka Ronald Wakitons was planning to move before the midterm elections in November, but I was sure.
So far, if East Asia Plus and Japan's 5CH News Plus have been destroyed by Ace and Megumi Sugawara, aka Slime, Japan has no obligation to cooperate with Trump anymore.
As your interpreter, Megumi Sugawara, said, Ronald should quickly turn 8kun into a board where the opinions of the big media can be posted as they are. Q quit being a phony religious.
There is no doubt that American lives, the US Capitol and pizzerias would be spared.
なんでロナルド、ピザ屋攻撃するん？
In fact, this operation has mostly attacked and persecuted American Trump supporters in Japan. From April 2020. In this video, Yukuri will be explained in English about this matter. In Japan, there are not many specifications to make people speak English Yukuri, so it was made on a trial basis, but I think it will be helpful.
What is behind the Q, Ronald Wakitons? This is because I felt that it was necessary to inform the Japanese side of the information as well. Residents on the Japanese side have no way of confirming whether or not the manager of 5CH is involved in the Q disturbance, only through information from the mass media. So, it is necessary to match information between Japan and the United States on what Q company was doing. Also, I hope this video will help you when you investigate Q, such as the FBI and the US Democratic Administration.
In another video, a person named Niraya Kanai, who was active as a volunteer on this board, said that his personal information was targeted by this 8kun 5-channel company and he was subjected to power harassment. In Japanese. But there's more to this story. Ronald Wakitons here, a Japanese interpreter who was a subordinate of Q, Megumi Sugawara, was attacking Mr. Niraya Kanai on the grounds that he had multiple accounts.
However, even if what Ace is saying is true, Megumi Sugawara has been persistently stalking only Niraya Kanai, who has not been very active.
In other words, the purpose was to regulate caps that hit Koreans in Japan, and they didn't really care about prohibiting the holding of multiple accounts, which they often say in the name of their cause is.
In the first place, on 5-channel, there were only about 7 people in this group of volunteers disguised as employees who said that an individual could be identified with only 4 things: cookie, user agent, refer, and host.
全員が全員、住人に強制と脅迫しかしなかったので、誰もこの男たちにネットワークの本当のことは教えなかったんだ。
では、本当のところを言うと、
A group led by Megumi Sugawara and Ace only tried to track personal information of volunteers who monitor North Koreans living in Japan trying to illegally gain profits in Japan.
The so-called Q team, led by Ronald Wakitons, seems to have claimed that communist China was a hypothetical enemy in the United States, but in Japan, they were leaking information to communist North Korea.
Niraya Kanai was also a supporter of the Trump administration in Japan, who almost accepted the claims of the Trump administration in the United States. However, from such a person, Ronald Wakitons, aka Q, and his subordinate Megumi Sugawara repeated threats and power harassment, such as asking for personal information.
Megumi Sugawara and others say that Niraya Kanai made radical claims. However, the content of Kanai Nirai's radical remarks is very similar to what the United States has been demanding of Japan under the Trump administration. Rather, he was a supporter who said, if Trump's America is in trouble and you ask Japan like this, I will help you.
トランプが自衛隊の軍事力を強化しろと言ってきたんだから、このビッグウェーブに乗るっきゃないわな。
In other words, Q, aka Ronald Wakitons, incited American patriots to storm the US Capitol, while in Japan they were suppressing groups that supported the Trump administration. In other words, Q, aka Ronald Wakitons, incited American patriots to storm the US Capitol, while in Japan they were suppressing groups that supported the Trump administration. This issue is similar to the illegal immigration issue in Mexico, and partly because of that connection, the Japanese Patriot Group, if anything, understood the policies of the Trump administration. In order to claim that such problems are extreme remarks and discrimination in Japan, the subordinates of Ronald Wakitons, aka Q, began to operate. Such actions began around 2020.
As a matter of fact, since 2014, 5-channel's legal staff has contracted with a lawyer from the North Korean gang Shibeki Tai in Japan. This Ace's hobby is to brag about his connections with the Japanese police and Shibeki Tai lawyers. After all, Shibeki Tai was an ideological core of the US, anti-China, anti-Japan, and pro-South Korea North Korea. It is a group close to the ideology of the Unification Church, which is currently becoming a problem in Japan. And the Shibeki Tai was also a group that made excessive demands for the rights of Koreans to Japan, and repeatedly resorted to violence along the way.
So American patriots are being duped by Ronald Wakitons. The company of Ronald Wakitons aka Q is making the exact opposite of Trumpism in Japan. Rather, Ronald Wakitons' subordinates attacked the long-standing, well-meaning American supporters of Japan, who thought, I think American policy is right, so let's cooperate in Japan. As a politician, Ronald Wakitons, aka Q, was connected to 5CH, but due to legal reasons, he has no contact with other than this North Korean group Shibeki Tai. The connection between Ronald Wakitons and Russia cannot be confirmed by his behavior in Japan.
Well, Q, Ronald Wakitons, and his son, other than that, say, I have the same fountain pen as President Trump, or I'm watching from the sky with an airplane similar to President Trump's model, as if it were a scam. It seems to me that he was just speaking in a manner similar to that of a teacher.
The employee account Bard came in 2017, and Jaruno K-chan came in 2020, so these two people are in it. So it was at the same time that this canon ruckus happened, and now we are recruiting, but this is also for the midterm elections in the United States, and Ronald Wakitons and others are going to do something in the United States. However, the person named Nirei Kanai has not moved in particular, especially from 2018 to 2020, and has done nothing but support the Abe administration in Japan. Supporting the current government is also a duty of the people, so that's fine, but...
静かにしてる人間に数名の社員アカウントのような数名がいきなり怒り狂ったら、まず普通の住人が疑うのは、その怒り狂った数名のその社員アカウントなんだわ。
Nirei Kanai was famous in the conservative circles of 2CH. He was also in a position where he was very vulnerable to attack because of his North Korean nationality.
北朝鮮側から見れば、大小首である。
However, from the table, if a North Korean sympathetic cap like Yaru Kaiken starts a controversial battle against Nirei Kanai, if 100, Yaru no Kaiken will lose 100. After all, they are people who do not protect liberalism and personal information protection.
だから、5チャンネル運営の中にエースや菅原めぐみのような手引きする人を作って、それを使って攻撃するしか手がなくなったんだ。
Those people are hired by Q, aka Ronald Wakitons, and they're not on America's side to begin with. Rather, they are villains who try to unilaterally judge people, ignoring personal information protection and contracts in both Japan and America. Around 2018, it seems that Ronald Wakitons was doing a similar self-play using a user agent over whether or not Q was a real person.
本来、ユーザーエージェントは公開したり勝手に調べたりしないという原則を、この男と菅原とバードと夜のケイちゃんら社員が騙し討ちして勝手に破ってるんだから、立ちが悪いんだ。
でも、それ、ACE という人も悪くないのかもしれないのだ。ニライカナイさんとその複数のアカウントのその、ユーザーエージェントは一致したのだ。
さあ、同一なものは同一なんじゃないかな。パソコンならみんな、ニライカナイ星氏がスマホを使っているという個人情報も含めて、それは個人のプライバシーであり公開してはいけないものよ。
じゃあ、専用ブラウザか何かで。
どのブラウザを使ったかどうかまで、いちいち個人のプライバシーに関わる問題を運営が勝手に公開した時点で、組織的な個人情報の漏洩とみなせるわ。
あれ、言われていればそうなのだ。でも、Q を本人だと公開したのは、確かロナルド、Wakitons.
Around 2018, there was a story that a person named Q reused the password Matrock, right? Even if CodeMonkeys confirms that it acknowledges the current Q as the person himself, that is also something that the site operator should not do in the first place.
あなたがユーザーだったら、自分のスマホが仮にサムソンだったり、ファーウェイだったり、ソニーだったり、iPhone だったり、デスクトップだったり、とか、そんなスマホの機種をいちいち見ず知らずの人に報告したいですか？それは Q とか関係なくです。
だから、話は、マトロックのパスワードが漏れたとき、何も確認しないで終わらせておけば、その後の話って起きないんですよ。
せやね。
いちいち、どの住人がどのスマホの機種を使ってるとか覗き見られていると知られた時点で、信頼型落ちですからな。
でも、ニライカナイさんも、ユーザーエージェント変えられたのだ。
日も言ってましたけど、昨ジェンヌにやられた時から、そういう知識は結構ありますね。
夜のケイちゃんだのバードだの ACE だのスライムだの菅原めぐみばあさんだの、あいつらが知らないってだけで、Google と Firefox なら標準装備よ。
ゲームオタク？
別に前話してた動画は、単に ACE はバカなくせに社員総出で自治すれに出張って変なルールを話して強制しようとしてるという話しかしてないのよ。
今時、VPN やプロキシやブラウザの設定の変更なんか、外国人みんな使ってくるわな。
Nirei Kanai is a reporter from East Asia Plus, right? Ace seems to be Chinese, but the Chinese Communist Party people who are authentic Chinese use much higher technology than Bard or Megumi Shigawara. The method of censorship by the CCP and the method of avoiding it are stored as knowledge. If they don't know, they can't keep up with people on sites like the Epoch Times who escape the CCP to protect their reason for speech. In that way, reporters who can't answer to some extent about techniques for evading police surveillance in China and North Korea can't be said to know the current China-related news.
In other words, people such as Surawara-chan who don't know this level of modern network technology are talking about the news with great pride.
東アジアプラスに、何か変なルールを菅原とバードがまた押し付けようとしてたな。どうも、多門にあの女はなりたいようね。
じゃあ、なんで、未来かない。
ってことは、まず、1、複数アカウントが、仮に未来かないにあったとして、それが全部 PC 経由だったので、全部のユーザーエージェントが同じで似たようなプロバイダだった。2、未来かないが、もう、菅原めぐみが怪しいと見抜いていて、目の前でテストして反応あるかどうか見てた。3、未来かないが昔やっていた技術を忘れた。4、本当はユーザーエージェントが一致してないのに、エースがでっち上げた。
本当のところは、2っぽい。
2018年から組織的に、そういう嫌がらせを、バード、エース、菅原で、してたんだから、未来かないも監視はするわな。しかも、変なルールを押し付けしようとする組織ならなおさら。
As a test, I let half of the people speak in English, but if you're in the US and want to know what Ronald Wakitons, aka Q, was doing on 5CH, I'd be happy if you could leave a comment in the comments section or something.
じゃ、よかったらチャンネル登録、いいね、高評価、コメントお願いします。ではでは。
イラスト、ブルーベリー様、シノピー様、坂岡、ヒュー様ほか、VOCDBYHTTP、こういうフォント CL と。はい。